Yesterday, we talked about how long Guru Rinpoche actually stayed in the Tibetan region. We can generally say that it is widely accepted that he stayed for at least 55.5 years. However, I didn't see any such record in the versions of the Testament of Ba that I read. I'm not sure if any of you have come across it. Taranatha stated that the duration was only 18 months. Also, I didn't find that in the Testament of Ba, so I'm not sure which version of the Testament of Ba Taranatha was referring to.
Vrabjit, vraxarna, ishinyang, satmamudanganagatira.
Nevertheless, many authentic and reliable ancient Nyingma texts clearly state that Guru Rinpoche consecrated Samye Monastery, the wheel of Dharma, after it was completed. The accounts of this consecration ceremony can also be found in the Testament of Bia. During the consecration ceremony, which continued for 3 or 4 days, Tibetan operas were performed every day. Guru Rinpoche and King Trisong Detsen were both present at the time. It is said that many traditional Tibetan dances and operas actually originated from this historical event. That was when they began holding Vajra performance festivals with singing and dancing as part of the celebrations. I used to think that when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche occasionally allowed Vajra dances, it was probably connected to the auspicious connections established during Guru Rinpoche's time. His Holiness often mentioned that he was the manifestation of Danje Yewu Bume, a great general of King Gesar, because his various habitual imprints from Guru Rinpoche's era had fully awakened. He was quite different from ordinary practitioners. He had a special karmic connection with sacred practices such as Vajra songs and Vajra dances. Special permission is granted for this, and that could be the reason. According to many historical accounts, the consecration ceremony of Samye Monastery was truly extraordinary, and everyone was very joyful. Bhutan Rinchen Drub also agreed with this point of view in his historical writings. There has always been a bit of debate over this. For example, even the construction period of Samye Monastery is also a matter of debate. Some historical records state that it took 5 years to complete, while according to certain Terma treasures of Guru Rinpoche, it took 12 years to complete. So there are indeed different views. Since Guru Rinpoche's miraculous powers are inconceivable, he could indeed do this. However, the way these events manifested to different beings to be guided cannot be determined in only one way. Because sentient beings have different capacities and perceptions, they cannot be explained in a fixed manner. Some people might wonder, how could Guru Rinpoche possibly travel to all these different places, directly give so many teachings, while concealing a vast number of Terma treasures? They may wonder how he could personally travel to and stay in so many areas, and accomplish so many different enlightened activities. Indeed, some people might look at it this way. They'd think that regardless of how many years he spent here, Tibetan region is just so vast and expansive. How could he possibly travel to so many places, hiding Terma treasures and giving teachings everywhere? When we look at the Tibetan region today, especially in the Dokam region, particularly Kham, there are many sacred mountains blessed by Guru Rinpoche. However, in places like Hongyuan, there are relatively few. I once joked with Khenpo Yeshe, Guru Rinpoche probably never visited your hometown because we have never heard of any sacred caves there. I'm not quite sure about Qinghai, but there should be some sacred sites there as well. As for the Kham region, it seems Guru Rinpoche visited nearly every mountain. Furthermore, he did not just visit them. Many great Tertans have discovered many Terma treasures within those cliffs, caves, and lakes. These are recorded in texts and are now clearly seen by all. There is absolutely no doubt about it. With such a large number of sacred sites, if he had to physically travel to all these places, some people might think he would not have enough time. They are judging him by ordinary human limitations, thinking that at that time there were no planes, no trains, and no communication networks. So they naturally wonder how he could have traveled to all these places. There is actually no need to worry about that. Such a way of thinking is incorrect, because Guru Rinpoche could effortlessly display boundless, miraculous powers. He truly had inconceivable, extraordinary powers. It is because of this, Otherwise, accomplishing all of this would not be so simple. Whether during Guru Rinpoche's lifetime or when he traveled to different places, many things were truly inconceivable. Later on, Guru Rinpoche manifested in person before one or more fortunate practitioners to teach them the Dharma. He would also personally visit specific places where groups of these fortunate practitioners gathered. For example, when great Mahasiddhas like Virupa, Lawapa, and Jalandharipa, among others, traveled to the sacred lands of India on multiple occasions, they actually met Guru Rinpoche in person and received direct teachings from him. Similarly, in the autobiography of Nubchen Sangye Yeshe, he recorded that during his later travels to Nepal and India, he met Guru Rinpoche several times. Many such biographies exist. Actually, such extraordinary phenomena occurred in the past, and they will continue to occur in the future. Some people might wonder whether similar extraordinary events, such as Guru Rinpoche's activities throughout Tibet, have occurred in other parts of the world. The answer is definitely yes. A prime example is Patriarch Bodhidharma in the Han region. When Patriarch Bodhidharma first arrived, many Zen Buddhist texts recorded his accounts, and the Book of the Old Tang dynasty documented them as well. When Patriarch Bodhidharma arrived in the Han region, Emperor Wu of Liang could not accept his teachings on the sudden path of Zen meditation. Because the emperor rejected his teachings, the initial auspicious connections were unfortunately unfavorable. However, the second patriarch Huike later received his lineage. What happened after became quite complicated. Master Bodhidharma was poisoned by his detractors, eventually entering parinirvana as a result. After he passed away, the king ordered them to bury him on a hillside. At that time, this was indeed what happened. In the following year, an imperial envoy named Song Yun, who was essentially like a modern diplomat, traveled to the western regions in what is now Xinjiang. While traveling through that area, he met Patriarch Bodhidharma on his return journey. The patriarch was walking toward the west, carrying a kakara with a single straw sandal hanging from it. At that time, Song Yun may not have known that Patriarch Bodhidharma had already entered parinirvana, so he asked him where he was going. This encounter happened on the Pamir Plateau, which is located northwest of Xinjiang. According to Faxian's record of Buddhist kingdoms, crossing this entire mountain range would take about a month. In those days, it would take a whole month just to cross these mountains. Song Yun encountered the patriarch near the Pamir Mountains. Unaware of the master's passing, he simply asked where he was going, and Bodhidharma replied that he was returning west to India. Upon returning to the capital, Song Yun told the emperor about this meeting. Because this story spread widely, people insisted that it was completely impossible, saying the master had entered parinirvana last year and was already buried. Later, when they opened the tomb on the hillside, they found nothing inside except for his monastic robe and one remaining straw sandal. His entire physical body had completely disappeared. The opening of the tomb was carried out under strict imperial orders, and no one was allowed to open it. The emperor had warned that anyone who opened the coffin would put their own life in great danger. However, his body was truly no longer there. This famous account is preserved in many Zen Buddhist texts. Regarding Master Bodhidharma, some believe he was the venerable Phadampa Sangye. The legends about Phadampa Sangye are likewise diverse, as he was also a highly miraculous figure. Later, people in the Han region believed that he eventually entered the Vajra cave of Mount Wutai and never emerged again. This is also recorded in history. However, if you calculate the timeline strictly, it seems difficult to align the eras of Bodhidharma and Phadampa Sangye. Nevertheless, we should not measure great Mahasiddhas solely by conventional timelines. Historical records naturally vary, but in any case, many of Guru Rinpoche's miraculous deeds share striking similarities with the extraordinary stories of certain Zen masters in the Han region. Now let's look at the next topic in the text. During another period, one had to travel by boat from southern India to western India. In the middle of the ocean along this route, there was a small island called Drāmiḍa. Long ago, it was populated only by Rakshasas and Dakins that fly through the sky, and so it came to have the name Drāmiḍa, or soaring in the sky. This island of soaring in the sky, or Drāmiḍa, is what we know today as Madagascar, an African nation. In 2024, when there were some matters at our center that needed to be handled there, Tenzin Tulku sent me some materials at that time. He shared that some other great masters had found that Madagascar was a place where Guru Rinpoche had stayed. Please take a look. Here are the records. I checked my journal earlier today, and these files are still preserved there. I keep all kinds of things in my journal. Let's examine the text to understand the historical context of that period. As you can see on the screen, around the 16th century, there was a person named Buddhaguptanatha. In his travelogue, he referred to Drāmiḍa as the island of soaring in the sky, and noted that it used to be called San Lorenzo Island. This matches perfectly with many English historical records. That is one piece of evidence, and there is also another document, which is a Tibetan text. As for the Tibetan document, a great master, who was also an astrologer and geographer, wrote a travelogue titled The Description of the World. In this text, as you can see, there is a specific footnote here. It states right here,
Purnatan, Monsieur Yasa ni Ramber parents.
This term represents France, and this one represents England.
Zunjin Yopa Dev Garna Sang Lo Rana Devarte Perang Tak Mata Kas Garlang Yotpate Repim Gumbur Namter Sole Jordan Garland Son So.
This brings us to Madagascar, which is the English name for the island country today. Therefore, back then, Madagascar was located exactly where we see it on the map now. The distance from its capital to the exact site where Guru Rinpoche stayed is roughly several hundred kilometers. At first, my computer showed a distance of about 200 kilometers, but the actual distance seems to be around 400 kilometers. That is the approximate distance from the current capital to that location, which lies mostly to the southwest. Tulku Tenzin traveled there to explore the area and visited the site in person. Look at this photo of Tulku Tenzin. I'm showing it to you as a reference. He looks so handsome.
Yeah.
Later, many of our fellow Dharma practitioners also traveled there. They visited the site and established wonderful, auspicious connections there. This location also matches the description in the present-day geography, recorded in the historical text by Khenpo Tenzin Trinley. In his description of the world, he explicitly stated that Drāmiḍa was indeed Madagascar. The accounts match exactly. So, why is this location so significant? This is because Guru Rinpoche stayed there for a long time. Some scholars wonder if this island was the land of Rakshasas, but personally I think that might not necessarily be the case. Today, it has a strong French influence, and its official language is French. Furthermore, the ancestry of the local people can be traced back to Indonesia. Their appearance, their complexion is slightly different from mainstream Africa, as their skin is not as dark as many people might expect. Instead, their skin is more of a light brown tone. So, it was on this island that Guru Rinpoche stayed for a long time. The subsequent text describes his entire journey on the island. This place, Drāmiḍa, is also documented in several other historical records. In various modern Chinese translations, it is sometimes rendered as Zhuode and sometimes as Zhongdang. The translations vary across different texts. At that time, the majority of the women on the island were Dakinis who practiced Vidya mantras. They were known as the Mantradarins, malicious Dakins who recited many Vidya mantras. There were also many men who were Bhutas with human bodies. In order to tame the sentient beings on the island, Guru Rinpoche resided in a cave there. At that time, his spiritual power was beyond measure, and through this power, he came to know that there were the king's queens, the 64 Mantradarins, emanations of the 64 Maturkas. There he entered meditative concentration, and through that power actually summoned them. Using various wrathful mantras and powerful mudras, he began to subdue them. They immediately fainted, and their bodies became rigid, overwhelmed by this powerful force. Finally, he subdued them with a fierce warning, saying, "If you do not obey my commands, I will burn you in the hearth of a fire offering." Guru Rinpoche often used the power of fire to subdue them. He didn't say he would cast them into water, nor did he say he would bury them in the earth. This explains why nowadays fire offering practices have become so popular. No matter where you go in the Han region, people often ask, should we do a fire offering? Fire offerings are indeed very powerful, and many of you perform them quite often. Consequently, all the Dakinis became docile and agreed to do whatever Guru Rinpoche commanded. Guru Rinpoche then commanded them to gather the chief deity of the Mantradharins along with the remaining Dakinis on the island. Once they had all gathered before him, he gave them Dharma teachings. This was the first time he subdued them. If I remember correctly, there may have been a third subjugation later, or perhaps something like that. Let's stop here for today.
Kirgana jirano chukai chupun zonen droa droa bandangara badma sodargye bandangara badma sodargye bandangara badma sodargye